Welcome back to the Village Camera Nerd. And those of you, all one of you, that watched the FEIYU Pocket unboxing, you know that I got really pissed off at this thing. Since then, the FEIYU Pocket and I have had a heart-to-heart and have got to know it for the gimbal that it is, and to accept it for its flaws and everything. The question is, does spending that quality time with it actually change my recommendation for this thing and be less pissed off at it? The answer is no. TLDR, it's a solid low-price beginner's camera for personal uses, but for those looking for professional blogging, filmmaking, or journalism, I can't recommend this camera. Now let's take an in-depth look at why. I recommend watching the unboxing and setup video that I posted to get to know the basics of operating with this camera, so I'm gonna jump straight forward into my impressions of using this itty-bitty thing to document the boring, unemployed pandemic life. Now, without any way to customize gimbal follow settings, the FEIYU Pocket will only be as good as what settings the firmware gives us. Overall, it's a bit twitchier than the Osmo Pocket. It can benefit from some better default smoothing settings. I would personally add warp stabilizer to some of these shots because it just got too scraggly. It doesn't handle bumpy car rides that well, so that tells me the motors are on the weak side. Face tracking is more or less useless. It puts a reticule on your face, but it didn't seem to do much with it. It lost me more often than it got me. Slow-mo modes are kinda cool, offering 3 built-in slow motion speeds, but it records only to 30p at the moment, so I had to interpret the footage to 24p to get my preferred frame rate. I can tell there's a quality loss when doing high frame rates, which I'll show a test later of. Time-lapse mode is decently functional with your choice of intervals. It creates a video for you, so no raw files to work with for now. Also, it doesn't do any electronic stabilization, so time-lapses can look a little bit twitchy and need some extra stabilization in post. Motion lapse mode is a bit glitchy as well. I was only able to get it to work once, honestly. It was nice when it did work. Hyperlapse mode is just okay. It also suffers from lack of digital stabilization, so the results are twitchy as well. If you're walking in a straight line with minimal motion, it should be fine. The firmware on the FEIYU Pocket just feels glitchy overall. This thing often changed its mode on me without me knowing it, and I found myself blogging in slow motion mode with no audio. Also found myself in follow all mode without knowing, which rolls the horizon easily, so that was pretty annoying. Also, the thing crashed on me a couple of times and I had to reboot, so it can definitely benefit from better firmware. So overall, it's a step down from the Osmo Pocket. Now, I criticized the Osmo Pocket before, but it's with the FEIYU Pocket that I learned to appreciate the Osmo more. So that I'm thankful of this thing for. Now, for those of you that seek a high quality image, here are some tests on the resolving power, which is nerd speak for the clarity and sharpness of the image. Let's start with photo mode. It's worth noting that this is a 16:9 sensor, and choosing the 4:3 aspect ratio will just crop the image down. From afar, the images look decent enough. But in JPEG mode, when you zoom in, there's some obvious sharpening and noise reduction happening even in low ISO situations. When shooting and editing in RAW, it's actually pretty solid. Pardon the lack of an Instagram-worthy pose here. At low ISOs, there's still grain just from how densely packed these pixels are, but you can use your RAW editor to more properly denoise and add sharpening to improve the image. Now let's switch to video mode with that annoying crop that got me so angry in the unboxing episode. Now let's take a look at how it resolves in 24p for all the available resolutions. At no zoom, there does not seem to be much of any difference between 4K, 2.7K, and 1080p. Let's zoom in on 200% to take a closer look between 4K and whoa, okay, sharpening of not that great of detail. 2.7K, not any noticeable difference from 4K. And 1080p, what the hell, they all look the same. Now looking deeper into the specs, this is a 1/2.5 inch 8.5 megapixel sensor, so essentially 4K uncropped. So when cropped for video, you're looking at effective pixels at more like 2.7K, resolving more like 1080p as you can see here. In nerd talk, this means F you FEIYU for screwing video people out of actual 4K. So for the rest of you, just shoot in 1080p with this thing. 4K is just not worth it. Let's see how the resolving power fares in higher frame rates, starting with 48p on all resolutions. The results are not good. It's pretty much VHS quality shit. Absolute shit. For some reason, 2.7K and 1080p actually look better than 4K. Honestly, I couldn't really look at it very long, so let's skip to 4K 60, zoomed in, and try not to vomit at just how bad it is. You know what, let's just, move on. So those picky with their image quality need not apply to this thing. This is not to say that the Osmo Pocket is absolute pro quality in comparison, but it definitely doesn't sacrifice nearly as much for video. Now, considering how it's not the professionals with professional lighting gear that are looking to use this, let's take a look at how the thing does in low light and high ISOs. Now, being such a small sensor with 1.62 micrometer or micrometer photo sites, I don't expect too much in low light. In these normal zoom ISO tests, the locked-in noise reduction balances that out okay though. But of course you'll get splotchy finer details as you go up in ISO and heavier noise reduction. Even when balancing out the exposure to the ISO increase, it seems the ISO increase boosts gamma more than the stop would give you. One of these settings isn't 100% accurate, but then again, who cares with this little thinky thing. So actually, considering how bad the resolving power is, low light performance with no custom picture settings whatsoever is actually not that bad. Not amazing, but not bad for consumers. Now, considering this is looking to be a better camera for the average consumer and Uncle Bob, it's kinda weird that they would include a log picture setting. So I dug in to see if this would be the magic bullet of getting amazing footage from this thing. When shooting in normal color, the contrasting color is overall old school GoPro quality, crunchy in both highlights and shadows. Auto exposure can end up clipping either end of the spectrum quickly, so this makes shooting in log a little bit more compelling. Now, the raw footage in FY log is super duper flat, so I would assume that this gives you plenty of latitude in post. But the danger is that this is recording in 8-bit 420 color. However, when grading this shot, it looks okay. It did allow me to keep a bit more of an airy look than the normal color setting, but it wasn't a ginormous difference, honestly. I guess since the footage is already not that great, so breaking it apart in the color spectrum doesn't really hurt that much. Now, walking with my little Asian Rapunzel, I wanted to see how backlit scenes graded. It did okay, but it got a little bit splotchy on the bricks and skin. Now, you would think that FY log would be super helpful when the background is overexposed and the foreground is underexposed, but the dynamic range of this thing is already so low that it doesn't really gain much and just gets the skin splotchy from boosting the shadows. Now, looking at straightforward faces of me and my little princess in bounce soft lighting, once it's graded, it actually looks okay. So whoever demands log with this little camera, just expose your skin properly. In a car shot, you do gain a little something balancing the overexposed outdoor with the interior, but I don't know if it's worth the trouble for the average consumer to do this. So overall, I don't find FEIYU to be the magic bullet from the FEIYU Pocket. It helps a little bit in some situations, but it's limited by the inherent dynamic range of this camera, so it's not really worth the trouble for the average consumer. So for audio, I decided to test the internal mics practically by blogging my experience getting a second COVID-19 test. So I only leveled the volume in this fake blog, so what you're hearing is more or less what is straight out of the camera. I also shot this whole thing in FEIYU and graded it, so you be the judge of the results.
Hey guys, we're doing a COVID-19 test and I'm just mounting this here and hopefully they don't make me shut it off when they stick that swab up my nose. I just had the first video shoot in a while, and while we practiced social distancing, we were using rental equipment, we were touching the same stuff. So here we are on the freeway to Lake Elsinore, to the Lake Elsinore Storm location of COVID-19 testing of Project Baseline. Okay. Okay. Oh hey, no wait. Good. Everybody else gets a line but me.
I'm gonna give you this tissue. You're gonna blow your nose with it after I finish asking you some questions, okay?
This is going to be something stuck very far up the nose, so the squeamish need not apply.
Alright, thank you so much. So it is a nasal test. I'm going to apologize in advance. A little bit uncomfortable, okay?
Yeah, I've done it once.
Oh,
yeah.
You're a pro then.
Yeah.
Alright. Weekend, okay?
Alright, thank you.
Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.
I can't believe how far you could stick something up your nose. It's not something I'm gonna try by myself. Oh, man, that's crazy.
So I find that the mics are really muffled. They need a lot of little tweaks in order to make it sound clear. But what do you guys think of the results of the test? Please do leave a comment below and let me know. My overall takeaway is that this camera would be great to own if it was priced even cheaper. At $249, it is not a steal compared to the current street price of the Osmo Pocket. Now, even when you consider how the FEIYU Pocket has built-in Wi-Fi, unlike the Osmo Pocket, which needs extra money to get via an accessory, the lack of an integrated hardware mounting option in the FEIYU Pocket makes that a trade-off. Now, the price will eventually go down, and I would consider this a great buy if it were $149. So those of you who think that this camera is good enough for them, wait until Labor Day sale. It will be much more worth it. Currently, with the current firmware and the phone software, you can't live stream with it. Now, this may change because they're constantly updating their firmware. Like, they've updated 2 times ever since I got this in my hands. Thanks for watching this review, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to know when more reviews come out. And this is when I trail off in my live taping. Hover over this orb until that subscribe thing comes out. Then click it, then the notification bell, and then check out these other videos and whatever other call to actions that they expect me to make on YouTube